The moment Brent's voice cut through the reception hall, I froze. "You don't belong here, leave," he barked, pointing directly at me. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the champagne glasses trembling in their holders. My stomach knotted, and for a second I felt the old, familiar ache of being invisible, the label of family disappointment my parents had stamped on me for decades. But this time I didn't flinch. I didn't retreat. Instead, I turned to Kala, my sister, her veil slightly askew from the chaos, and said, "I will. But first, wanna meet the girl he's been having an affair with for the last 6 months?" The hall fell into stunned silence. Brent's face went pale before Kala even stood, and for the first time, I saw the panic I had carried in secret for months reflected back at me. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm always curious to see how far these stories reach. Now let's get into it. I had always been the quiet one, the shadow trailing behind Kala, my parents' golden girl. Every achievement of mine was met with a sigh, a comparison, or worse, outright dismissal. They called me overly sensitive, dramatic, disappointing. It wasn't just Brent's words that stung. It was a lifetime of being told I didn't measure up, and now, in front of the entire wedding, that lifetime of quiet hurt was crystallized in one cruel sentence. But as I stood there, I felt a strange clarity. I realized that being underestimated had been my advantage all along. People like Brent thrived on arrogance and blind confidence. I had something far more powerful: patience, observation, and the ability to strike precisely when the time was right. I wasn't just hurt, I was determined. Every insult, every snide remark from my family, every moment I'd been dismissed, had built a quiet fire inside me. It wasn't about revenge yet. It was about justice, about showing the truth without yelling or pleading. I could see it now. Brent had made the mistake of thinking I was powerless, of thinking I would shrink away. But he had never considered that the family disappointment could also be the one to pull back the curtain, exposing lies, secrets, and betrayal in a way no one could ignore. Today was just the beginning. Ever since I could remember, Kala had been the star of every room, every achievement celebrated while mine barely registered. College acceptances, job offers, even casual praise. My parents' attention always landed on her. I learned early to step back, to shrink, to applaud quietly while being overlooked. But even then, I noticed the cracks others didn't see. Brent had been around for years, smiling too warmly, lingering too long at family gatherings. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe imagination, maybe paranoia. But patterns emerged. Glances, private whispers, little disappearances that no one noticed except me. Over time, the pieces painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Brent wasn't just charming. He had been weaving a secret life, one that Kala had no clue about. Months ago, the uneasy feeling solidified. I began paying attention, noting receipts, small inconsistencies, and the way his eyes flickered when certain names were mentioned. I didn't have proof yet, but I didn't need to act hastily. I understood the power of patience, of waiting for the perfect moment. Each event, each smile he gave Kala while hiding truths, fueled a quiet resolve inside me. The sting of betrayal isn't immediate. It simmers, building weight until it demands recognition. I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. Every overlooked insult, every parental favoritism, every slight Brent had made in hushed tones, all became pieces of a larger strategy forming in my mind. I realized that being underestimated was my advantage, that months of careful observation could be transformed into undeniable clarity when the time came. By the time the wedding arrived, I wasn't just the ignored sister anymore. I was someone who had watched, remembered, and planned. Every detail, every hidden betrayal had been catalogued in my mind, ready to unfold. What others thought of as my passivity was really patience. The seeds of justice, of exposure, were sown long ago, and they were ready to bloom. The room buzzed with whispers, the clinking of glasses drowned out by shocked murmurs as Brent's face drained of color. Kala froze, her hands gripping the edge of her chair, eyes wide with confusion and hurt. Family members exchanged glances, some leaning forward, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The energy in the hall was tense, jagged, impossible to ignore. I slipped quietly through the crowd, my heels barely making a sound on the polished floor. Outside, the cool evening air hit me like a balm, giving me a moment to breathe, to center myself. I steadied my racing thoughts, forcing calm over the storm of emotions inside me. Composure was my shield. Control was my weapon. After a few minutes, I called Jace, my longtime friend and lawyer. His voice was steady, grounding. He had always been the one to see situations clearly, to advise when emotion could cloud judgment. I explained what had unfolded, seeking guidance on how to navigate this minefield without harming Calla, while ensuring Brent faced the consequences of his deception. Even as I spoke, my mind wrestled with conflicting currents. Loyalty to my sister, the sister who had unknowingly married a liar, tugged at me. Yet the betrayal Brent had orchestrated, the lies whispered behind closed doors, ignited a fierce resolve to act. I couldn't let this pass. The challenge wasn't just exposing him, it was doing so without shattering the fragile trust and love Calla still held. I lingered on the edge of the reception, watching shadows move inside through the glass doors. Every step I took had to be deliberate, every decision measured. The chaos within the hall mirrored the turmoil in my chest, but unlike Brent, I wasn't panicking. I was plotting, calculating the safest, most precise way to ensure the truth came to light. The immediate fallout was just the opening act. The real reckoning was still to come. I began quietly piecing together the fragments Brent had carelessly left behind. Receipts from hotels under false names, subtle notes in his calendar, messages tucked in folders he thought no one noticed. Each one whispered the truth I needed. Every discovery felt like a puzzle falling into place, a hidden world finally revealing itself to me. Brent moved through life oblivious to my scrutiny, confident in his secrecy. That ignorance was my advantage. Every careless smile, every offhand comment he made, became another thread I could pull, weaving a tapestry of undeniable proof. I stayed invisible, patient, letting his arrogance seal his own trap. Meeting Mira required caution. I approached her as a stranger, offering warmth and curiosity, masking the intent simmering beneath my questions. Myra's initial hesitation faded and she began to speak, honest, unaware of the full web Brent had spun. Her perspective was invaluable not just as confirmation, but as a lens into the choices Brent had made, the deception he had maintained, and the impact it would have on Calla when the truth emerged. Even as I gathered evidence, a complicated tide of emotions swept over me. There was a cold satisfaction in uncovering what he had tried so hard to hide, a sense of vindication that my instincts had been right all along. But alongside it came a sharp ache for Calla, who remained blissfully unaware, walking into a marriage shadowed by betrayal. My anger, my disappointment, and my protective instinct coalesced, fueling a resolve that was as careful as it was relentless. Each step forward in the investigation was not just about exposing Brent. It was about safeguarding the sister I loved while ensuring the lies that had been spun could no longer stand unchallenged. The game was no longer one of speculation. It was a strategic march toward truth, and I was finally ready to take the lead. I withdrew from their orbit entirely, leaving messages unanswered and appearances minimal, letting the silence speak louder than confrontation ever could. They assumed my absence meant weakness or retreat, never realizing the careful strategy unfolding beneath the surface. Every meeting they held, every decision made without me, I observed quietly, cataloging opportunities and weaknesses alike. Without raising suspicion, I began influencing matters Brent thought were securely under his control. Subtle shifts in investment decisions, rerouted proposals, and strategic suggestions to trusted associates gradually weakened the hold he had cultivated over family ventures. Each move was invisible to him, executed with precision so that the balance of power shifted without his notice. In moments of solitude, memories of my upbringing surfaced with striking clarity. How my accomplishments had always been footnotes to Calla's victories, how my opinions were dismissed in favor of her desires, and how my parents' adoration had been reserved exclusively for her. Every slight, every overlooked birthday, every triumph I had achieved quietly, all of it formed the foundation of the person I was becoming. The pain of being sidelined transformed into something stronger. Hurt became focus, neglect became calculation, and invisibility became my advantage. Each memory fueled a determination that was no longer reactive but intentional. I was no longer the overlooked daughter, the shadow to someone else's light. I was deliberate, capable, and empowered, shaping outcomes in ways that Brent could never anticipate. The quiet distancing wasn't just about space. It was about reclaiming control, building strength from the fractures of betrayal, and proving that underestimation could be the most powerful tool in the arsenal of someone determined to redefine their own worth. I arranged my appearance at the Sunday brunch to seem casual, as if the timing were purely coincidental. Conversation flowed around me, laughter punctuating the room, but I steered the discussion carefully, dropping innocuous questions and comments that hinted at secrets without exposing everything at once. Each word was measured, each glance calculated to unsettle without revealing my hand. Brent's composure cracked almost immediately. A flicker of unease crossed his face, his usual confidence faltering under the weight of suspicion he couldn't place. Calla noticed it too, her brow knitting as doubt crept in, a subtle shift in her posture betraying the first inkling of uncertainty. The air thickened, charged with the tension of unspoken truths. I maintained an effortless calm, sipping my coffee as though nothing were amiss, but inside, every observation was sharp, every reaction catalogued. My comments acted like breadcrumbs, leading Calla toward the knowledge she had not yet pieced together, a trail she could follow at her own pace. I allowed the discomfort to build, letting Brent's anxiety manifest in small gestures. A tightened grip on his fork, a forced smile, a fleeting glance toward the door. The room hummed with quiet anticipation, the conversation layered with implications that only I fully understood. I could feel the suspense ripple through the brunch, a slow burn that made every glance, every pause, every exchange laden with meaning. The first public confrontation wasn't about shaming. It was about planting seeds, letting the inevitable truth grow from curiosity and suspicion until it could no longer be ignored. Brent's secret was no longer hidden, yet the final reveal remained just out of reach, a tension that promised a reckoning yet to come. I asked Calla to meet me in the study, a quiet space where no interruptions could break the moment. I laid out the evidence methodically. Hotel bills with dates matching his supposed business trips, printed messages and photos that left no room for denial. The weight of it all pressed into the room, tangible and undeniable. At first, Calla recoiled, her voice shaky as she tried to defend him, refusing to believe that Brent could betray her so completely. Her hands trembled over the papers, eyes darting between proof and the man she thought she knew. But as the reality settled in, disbelief gave way to devastation, tears blurring her vision as the betrayal she had ignored became undeniable. Meanwhile, Brent's veneer of control evaporated. He stammered, searching for excuses, attempting to manipulate the narrative, but Calla's questions cut through every lie. His panic was raw, unmasked, and almost mesmerizing in its intensity. I remained composed, silent except for the occasional clarifying point, letting the truth speak for itself. I didn't need to rage, to yell, or to humiliate. The facts were sufficient. My revenge had taken on a new form, not through confrontation but through revelation. Each piece of evidence, each careful step I had taken, now forced justice to unfold naturally. Brent's duplicity couldn't hide behind charm or manipulation, and I realized that the most powerful retribution was simply letting the truth exist fully, unimpeded, exposing the man who had underestimated me from the start. The following days were a whirlwind of tension. Brent and Myra's presence at family gatherings became unbearable. Whispers followed them everywhere. Disapproving glances and thinly veiled criticism eroded the image they had tried to maintain. Their attempts to defend themselves fell flat, met with polite but firm resistance from relatives who had once looked past their misdeeds. Calla wrestled with her emotions, torn between loyalty to her marriage and the undeniable truth of his betrayal. I stood beside her, offering guidance, listening without judgment, reminding her that strength sometimes meant letting go. I made it clear that my support had limits. I wouldn't shield Brent and I wouldn't compromise my own boundaries for his comfort. For the first time in years I felt unshakable. Standing in the center of a family still loyal to tradition and appearances, I no longer bore the label of family disappointment. My patience, strategy, and calm had forced the reckoning, and now the room acknowledged my presence with a mixture of respect and wariness. The subtle power of quiet intelligence and measured action had revealed itself unmistakably. The parents who had once favored Calla at every turn now realized that their blind adoration had enabled deception and hurt. Their attempts to control outcomes backfired, leaving them forced to reckon with both Brent's betrayal and the strength of the child they had once dismissed. In that silence I felt a quiet vindication. I had acted with precision, with morality, with the patience that turned years of neglect into a moment of undeniable authority. For once, the family hierarchy had shifted and I stood at the center, not as a disappointment, but as the one who had ensured truth and justice prevailed. After the storm of betrayal and exposure, I took time to reconnect with myself, rediscovering confidence I hadn't allowed to surface in years. I learned to trust my instincts, to rely on my judgment, and to honor my own needs above anyone else's expectations. Independence became not just a choice, but a declaration of self-respect. I poured energy into building a professional life that reflected my vision. The boutique investment firm I launched catered to clients overlooked by traditional institutions, and mentoring young women gave me purpose beyond profit, a chance to guide others toward empowerment I had fought so hard to claim. Each success reinforced that I was capable, deserving, and strong. Memories of the past surfaced in stark contrast. The timid girl always in the background, the one whose voice was ignored, whose achievements were minimized. Now those shadows only highlighted how far I had come. Each day reinforced that the power I once lacked had been reclaimed and transformed into influence and respect. Callous presence in my life grew too, but differently. Our bond strengthened, yet I maintained the boundaries I had set. Trust and affection existed on my terms, ensuring mutual respect and honesty. For the first time, I realized that relationships didn't have to come at the cost of self-worth. I had learned to value myself, to act deliberately, and to shape my own story. The girl they once dismissed as powerless had become a figure admired for resilience, judgment, and quiet authority. Someone who could stand tall, guided by her own choices and never again defined by anyone else's perception. The next family gathering felt different, charged with an unspoken awareness of the shifts that had taken place. Conversations flowed around me, but eyes kept returning, noting the quiet confidence I carried. Brent lingered at the edges, awkward and isolated, his presence a reminder of choices exposed and trust shattered. I observed without a word, letting the atmosphere speak for itself. There was no need to gloat. The truth had already done its work. The whispers, the careful glances, the subtle acknowledgement of my achievements, all were confirmation that justice had unfolded naturally. I felt a satisfaction rooted not in triumphalism, but in having reclaimed power through measured action and unwavering resolve. Sitting quietly, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The years of being dismissed, the careful observations, the patient planning, and the deliberate steps that led to this moment. I understood my own worth, my resilience, and the quiet authority that came from standing firm without compromise. The family's hierarchy had been disrupted, the illusions dissolved, and yet I felt no malice, only clarity. Independence had become my ultimate revenge, a life built on truth and strength rather than vindictiveness. I glanced at Kala, our bond intact but now defined by mutual respect rather than dependency, and wondered how forgiveness fit into the picture. Was it necessary to forgive, or was the act of stepping into my own life, fully empowered and unshaken, the truest form of retribution? The answer remained mine to hold, leaving the room, the family, and even Brent to wrestle with the consequences, while I embraced the quiet, undeniable victory of self-determination. Do you think I was right to step back and take control of my life, or should I have stayed and tried to forgive them? Share your thoughts. I'm eager to hear your perspective. For more intense stories, subscribe and hit the bell.